DCKO, arguably one of the biggest events of DC's modern history, has concluded, and we are now entering Act 2 of DC's All-In initiative, starting with Next Level. And with this, we're not only getting brand new issue 1s for a bunch of different books that are meant to also be good starting off points for readers if they haven't read the previous runs, but also current going runs are also going to be given this type of treatment. Yes, they're going to continue from whatever number they were at during the DCKO event and their tie-ins, but for a lot of them, they're also going to be relatively new jumping on points for the new arcs so that people can even jump in midway through a run, which I find pretty fun and interesting. But today I'm going to talk about the first 3 new books for DC's Next Level initiative, being the first issues of Lobo, Batwoman, and Deathstroke the Terminator, all of which I'm really excited to talk about because I actually did enjoy these books. Now, this isn't going to be a replacement for actually, reading the comics and buying them yourselves. Obviously, go and support your local comic shops, buy them digitally if you have to. This is just going to be my initial thoughts on the first issues of all 3 of these titles, as this is the first wave of DC Next Level. We're going to be getting more. The next 2, I believe, are going to be the number 1s for a new Zatanna and Firestorm run, and later on we're going to be getting, over the course of this year going to next year, Doom Patrol, Teen Titans. A lot of different titles are going to be having brand new number 1s for DC Next Level, with fresh jumping on points for new readers, that which is the goal, with a more creative focused sense of storytelling to help expand these characters and help them grow and tell new stories with creative teams that are very passionate about each character. But as always, before we get started, don't forget to like and subscribe and hit the notification bell for updates on future videos. Really helps, shows you guys enjoy to make here on the channel, shows you want to see more. Also hype it up to help boost it up in the algorithm so more people discover this, because I do really love talking about DC and I want to keep talking about this as much as I possibly can. But let's get started. The first book I want to get into is just Lobo, the main man himself, and this is probably going to be the most fun comic in DC's Next Level due to the sheer fact that it's just unabashedly Lobo being Lobo. Seeing him go to a space bar, seeing people talk about a movie, having the meta-narrative of them talking about an anti-hero with Lobo not understanding what it is and just pissing all over it essentially, and even giving a very crude and abridged version of what his origin story technically is, how he literally just killed off his entire planet because he was bored, even acknowledging New 52 era Lobo, which was an entirely different character. He's like, you know what, let's just skip that and not talk about it. Lobo is a very funny character. And funnily enough, this is actually the first Lobo run I'm really getting into reading. I have only known from like the crappy Lobo run from New 52 and just passing knowledge from other comic book fans and friends of mine that do love the character. So I have basic knowledge on him, but this is me more so going in with fresh eyes outside of his animated appearances and stuff like that. And just seeing Lobo just tear apart a bunch of nobodies just for the sake of it, having a beer in the middle of a space stop, and then just him being a bounty hunter and just going through this weird, bizarre whole thing only for it to end in him basically being asked by this multi-omni conglomerate corporation to be the star of a bounty hunting reality show. And it all kind of happened because Lobo lost the bounty for this guy he was supposed to bring in, which led him to just tear through the entire company's entire security force, only for the head to be like, that's exactly what we need. We're gonna make you into a star, baby. And that's literally all we get in this first issue. It's just us seeing Lobo being unabashedly himself, and it really does show that this whole run is just meant to be fun. Like, you're not supposed to take it seriously, it's just a fun romp with the main man himself. Scotty Young definitely is having the time of his life and is taking the type of parody-esque nature of what Lobo is, as he was initially created to be just a parody of like 90s edge comic books and stuff like that. And the fact that he just looks like a reject member of Kiss is honestly still absolute gold. Not to mention the artwork in this book is just great. It's got a grungy-esque, silly, absurdist feel to it that really does fit Lobo's entire personality, and the action sequences that we've gotten in this book were just a hell of a lot of fun to read, and I cannot recommend it enough. If you want to just get an introduction to Lobo as a character, I really do think if you have even less knowledge than me, or just want to see some stuff from Lobo because of the new Supergirl movie coming out, just to get an idea of who he is, and the fact of why Jason Momoa would want to play him and why he's his favorite character, read this first issue and you will immediately get the appeal of Lobo. The second book we're going to talk about is Deathstroke the Terminator. Now, this is actually going to be a very interesting thing because that is literally Deathstroke's entire epithet. He's literally called the Terminator. For a couple of years, I've noticed his books that he's gotten, especially from when we had that run in DC Rebirth era, he did not have the epithet the Terminator in the title. And I feel like this is to show that the team behind this new Deathstroke, where it's like, we're taking it back to form, but we're also gonna show us some new stuff stuff to get you more into Deathstroke. Tony Flex gives us a pretty interesting story about Deathstroke, cut between an initial talk between his daughter Rose and Slade's best friend, who is also kind of his handler, who gets him bounty hunting job. Everything is with his friend talking to him over comms, and also just a letter that Slade is writing to his daughter about wanting to be a better man, but can't, all while he's just absolutely tearing through a security detail in the most over-the-top and flashy way possible. Yeah, Slade's a bounty hunter. He's gonna get the job done, but he's like, you know what? I'm gonna have a little bit of fun first, give this a bit of an explosion in this instance. And he just decimates an entire army, including 2 metahumans later down as he goes down to whoever is inside this locked cellar. But all this is juxtaposed with him trying to reconnect with his daughter, or at least his friend trying to help the two of them reconnect, because he's not going to be there forever to basically be a liaison between the two of them. And Rose and Slade's relationship is something that I have, again, only heard in passing because I haven't read a bunch of Deathstroke stuff, but I do know that it is definitely a strained relationship. And another thing I also know about Rose is that she was together with Jason Todd for a bit, so that is something else. But having this whole juxtaposition of Slade going through probably one of the biggest tears of a just one-man assault on an armed base, an armed bunker, all while we're seeing that Rose is not really sure on whether or not she wants to accept her father back into her life, and Slade's conflicting feelings over all of this with the banter between him and his friend. It is something incredibly interesting, as it leads to a twist at the end that puts Deathstroke in a very bizarre situation, as it seems like he was set up for a murder, and now the rest of the book is seemingly going to have to balance that mystery and how that's going to affect Slade going forward, and having to eventually deal with his relationship and potentially mend it, or maybe even fracture it even more, his relationship with his daughter. And that is a good personal feel to it. Deathstroke has always been in different forms of media, like the early mid-2000s Teen Titans cartoon, where he was just an antagonist to the Teen Titans, or in most recent adaptations or books, he's either been just a flat-out bounty hunter or an antagonist to the main group of Titans, or other characters like Batman, or perhaps just a kind of off and on type deal when it comes to specific situations. It's interesting from what I have seen, but this really is presenting Deathstroke as the main character in a story that's meant to build him up and develop him a lot more, while also pushing him a bit more outside of his initial comfort zones as a bounty hunter, a mercenary in this instance. I kept saying bounty hunter in this section. I'm still thinking about Lobo. He's a mercenary, not really just a flat-out bounty hunter. He's just a professional mercenary. And another part of the fun of this book, outside of the just jaw-dropping art and action sequences, is seeing how Slade uses literally not only every tool in his kit, but his surrounding areas to just deal with every situation that comes his way. This book really does show why his epithet is just fully just Deathstroke the Terminator. And I feel like if you want to see Deathstroke, at least see what Deathstroke is capable of, this book definitely will give you what you want. This made me excited to read Deathstroke, and I was very on the fence in terms of reading other Deathstroke runs before this. Since this was a fresh #1, I'm like, you know what? Let me give it a try, and now I want to read more Deathstroke. It's already doing its job, this entire section of the DC Next Level. But the last one was one that I actually was the most intrigued by, because Batwoman has a returning writer, because Batwoman is being written by Greg Rucka, and he previously wrote for Batwoman in the past, as well as one run called Batwoman Elegy, which I actually read before this issue, because I heard that it's going to touch on subjects from that run. And while this first issue gives you the generalized rundown of Batwoman, her relationship with Alice, who is her twin sister gone insane as the villain Alice, and a just ancient cult with a dark prophecy that has to do with her name literally being Kate Cain, you know, like Cain, the son of Adam, who is considered in the Bible the first murderer. I believe that's how they're interpreting that, and just using that as some sort of dark prophecy in the DC universe tied to Batwoman. And that is literally what Batwoman Elegy focuses on, as well as diving into who Kate Cain is as a character towards the end of it, fully fleshing out everything about her and why she put on the symbol of the bat to fight crime, and her relationship with her family, the mystery of her twin sister going missing and the death of her mother, and the whole twist with Alice later on towards the end of that run. And this first issue plays on that by having some images just of Batwoman fighting Alice in some underground area after DCKO tournament, as she's trying to unleash this fire pit from Apocalypse that is just somewhere in a cave to try and unleash this dark prophecy. And it's cut with Kate being in what seems like a mental asylum, as she seems to be going through some sort of mental turmoil and traumas that she's trying to work through, talking to these different therapists and people that are working in this area, and thus just giving us a bit of a back and forth and setting us up for potentially what could be more of a psychological thriller trailer for Batwoman and her going through these memories. But towards the end, we see that this secret cult organization knows not only that Kate is Batwoman once more, but that they're also trying to set her up to fulfill this dark prophecy. Also, the villains are Greek, and I honestly kind of like it because I'm Greek and I find it kind of fun to see some Greek antagonists, even though they're like brand new characters. I don't know why, it tickles my funny bone at this point, and I'm very interested in that. But the issue literally just ends with Kate putting on the Batwoman costume, finding these new group from this cult, shining the bat signal into their lair. He's like, you want me? Come and get me. Who's first? And that's literally it. I literally did paraphrase what this issue was initially about, because I did talk about Batwoman Elegy, but reading Batwoman Elegy was probably my best decision for like fully appreciating this first issue. Now, as a new reader, do I think Batwoman #1 of DC Next Level will get you to try and at least be interested in Batwoman? Gives you a good introduction to Batwoman if you wanted to jump in and read from now. I think so. It gives you just enough for you to be interested in Kate's journey, enough about her history, at least in terms of her connection to Alice and the trauma behind that and the difficulties of how this whole revelation happened in the past is affecting her now to this day, post the KO tournament. And bringing back that cult is definitely an interesting thing to go about. Again, I haven't read a lot of Batwoman, like much at all. So if this cult was still a recurrent thing throughout all of Batwoman's runs, or at least in a couple of major arcs, and is only now being brought back because it was built up towards, let me know in the comments, and I definitely have some reading to do. But at least for right now, despite me reading Batwoman Elegy or reading this first issue, I do think it does a decent enough job in terms of getting people interested in a Batwoman story. A nice start to seeing what Kate could be going through and this whole prophecy of Cain and this bizarre underground cult and all that stuff. But I do think in terms of new readership, I do think that it is slightly below the other two, as yes, Deathstroke did have some history in terms of, his daughter, but they kind of established that and then run with focusing primarily on what's going on with Deathstroke and the story that's being set up with there. With Batwoman, you kind of need a little bit of extra info to really grasp on to the meat of what the story is at least setting up for this run. Greg Rucka still did a really good job with this first issue, but I do think in terms of first introductions to like new readers to just hop on in and have fun and just get a good understanding of the character, Lobo definitely did the best job of it, like not even close. Speed ran his origin, showed you what Lobo was about, set up some absurd concept for him. It was perfect for Lobo, and I do think that this definitely is the best first issue of DC Next Level in terms of new readers just jumping onto a book for the first time for a character that they probably barely even know or have little information on. And while I would say Deathstroke and Batwoman are kind of tied for me personally in some instances in terms of new readership, I do think Deathstroke does have that slight edge over Batwoman. But if you want to tell me which ones I think are the best in terms of quality, based on my own personal opinion, I'd still put Lobo at #1, but Batwoman is a very close second with what they were trying to set up and the storytelling from the perspective of Kate in that issue going back and forth and the setup. And Deathstroke underneath, it was just a lot of fun, but like I wasn't the biggest Deathstroke fan to begin with. And while it did have some good setup, I enjoyed the last two a bit. Now I do have a bit of bias towards Batwoman due to the fact that me reading Batwoman Elegy before her issue 1, but my point still stands that that's my enjoyment of it so far for DC Next Level's first wave. If you want to see me talk about the next first issues of DC Next Level for these new titles for like Zatanna and Firestorm, let me know in the comment section down below. I might do that as well, and obviously that video will probably be a lot shorter than this one because I'll be talking about 2 comics, first impressions and stuff like that in there, but that's for another time. Let me know down in the comment section down below, out of these 3, which one are you most interested in starting? And if you did read them, which one is your favorite and which one do you think is the best for brand new comic readers to jump on in? Let me know in the comment section down below, and I hope you all have an awesome day.